in less than 3 years, 90% of all engineers are going to use AI code assistant. However, this number doesn't surprise anyone, or at least not me. What does surprise me is that today, middle of 2025, 70% of the AI-generated code has issues in it. 70%, 7 out of 10, really, really problem. And what are we going to do about that? This is exactly what we're going to talk about in the next, how long do we have until the?
2 hours.
2 hours, all right. So I'll try to do it in 30 minutes, and then we'll open that great battle of whatever you got. So, hi everyone, I'm Ori. I'm the VP of Product Management at Checkmarx. I've been around for many, many years. I started my career in HP. I know that Evans is from Fortify, so I was there as well for a few years, had a few stops, and over the last 5.5 years, I'm at Checkmarx. Back in Israel, I was also part of the OWASP community, and I have to say to this community, this is definitely something completely different, and I love the kind of family vibe. So definitely well done to the organizers. It's not something to be taken for granted. I moved 4 months ago to the States. This is how I call the story, 21 suitcases and a smile. This is all we took. Me, my 2 kids, you can see the leash for the dog, and my wife, and we went here, Raleigh, North Carolina. We're now based in Cary, and I have lots of great stories and also interesting experiences on what does it mean to move to the States. For example, our first baseball game, we went to see the Durham Bulls, which when someone from work reached out and said, "You want to come see a Bulls game?" I said, "Isn't that in Chicago?" So this is my kid, and he did made me watch the Kevin Costner movie before, so I know what I was talking about. And here is another, let's call it North Carolina first experience, my first DMV appointment. Like, if you don't see that, we're sorry, we don't have any availability at the moment. When is the moment? Always. Like, getting the, I mean, if there is somebody from here that's related to the DMV, I'd appreciate some help. I do have an appointment next month, but I worked very hard for that. All right, so that's me. I'm here, happy to give you my experiences. I love it, by the way. I love North Carolina. So thank you for having me. What are we going to talk about specifically around AI and application security? First of all, what's the impact of AI on the enterprise? I know that there's lots of various functions here that are related and unrelated to security. I'm gonna talk a bit about fundamental problem of application security, a bit on agentic, and what can you do tomorrow morning. So let's start and talk about the impact of AI on the enterprise. We see that in 2 folds. One is acceleration. This is where most of the industry started, like a Copilot, a GPT, using that to generate emails, presentation, everything from videos to emails is now being generated. On the second part is around utilization. We are seeing, and I will also share one of the first stories around that, companies take AI and put it in their .com, in their mobile application, and it's becoming part of the application footprint, which takes me to the first point. This is a very nice visualization of a modern application. If you are, and again, not to geek out on technology, but you have your application source code that you need to scan with a static scanner. You have open source components that you need to scan with SCA, software composition analysis, and so on, and so on, and so on. But what happens now is that we understand that there is a new piece in this puzzle, in this Lego, that is LLMs. And how do you secure them? Whether they are commercial off-the-shelf, OpenAI, Claude, all of that. I will talk about that in a couple of minutes, but there is something that we need to start to address, and this is how the application footprint is changing. Now, one of the first cases that happened, and not to pick on Air Canada, I'm flying with them quite a lot, but this is really a nice example. In a nutshell, and you can Google it, in April of last year, they implemented a chatbot in their aircanada.com that one of their users were able to exploit. It got the chatbot to hallucinate and give him, in that case, 50% discount. Air Canada came and said, that's not us, that's the chatbot. Long story short, court ruled in favor of the customer, stating that if you have AI as part of your application, in this case Air Canada, it's as if it's part of Air Canada. And this was the first case, and there are many others, and please Google that. So this is the Air Canada and how the application footprint is changing. Other areas that people are already using AI to accelerate, and talking about the first aspect, is writing code. And this is from the Dora. What? Is that God talking?
It's a local call.
All right. By the way, yeah, I have a funny story on AI, but not now. So, Dora, it's a kind of annual survey coming from Google. We are working very closely with them. This is from 2014. You can see code writing almost 75%, and however, security analysis not there, and it changes all the time, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Now, if we talk about development for a second, software engineers, there is great impact on development. The first impact is developers are more efficient. This is great because it means more business velocity. As organizations invest more in application, in digital transformation, everybody wants happy developers that are more efficient. So 41%, and this number changes almost every week, and it really depends who you ask, because Microsoft will tell you that it's already in the 80%, Google is claiming 70%, but overall we are at around 50%. Developers are claiming up to 65% of improved efficiency, definitely a good sign. And something that is very interesting, especially for large enterprises, is the ability to adapt to new programming languages. Think of your COBOL legacy project that you're afraid to touch. Now you can easily do that with AI, and this is definitely interesting. On the other side, it's far from perfect. Teams that have reported using AI across their entire team have reported that the throughput is down 1.5%, and stability of each delivery is down 7.2%. So it's not perfect, it's not a magic bullet, but definitely getting there. Now, we might come to think that AI code generation is secure, right? Not so much. The big problem with AI code generation is the fact that we as humans tend to think that anything that is machine generated is better than human generated. Why? Because this is how our brains are wired. However, there are many, many researchers and indexes proving the other thing, and we need to be aware of that. Now, this one is backsbench.com, unaffiliated to Checkmarx, but definitely something that is worth checking. These are the most, and this list goes all the way to 50 or 60, and they have their own way, and it's defined here. I won't go into the specifics, but in short, they say how secure the code that the model is generating, and they also have different types of instructions. And I'm going to talk about instructions, but the no security reminder is the vanilla Copilot generate code for me, and The other side is a very specific reminder or instruction for security. And you can see that still with that, this one, like the most right column, is still insecure, and I'm going to talk about that. So AI is far from being perfect, specifically around security. Now, the last thing that we need to remember is as developers are now becoming more efficient, code generation is about to grow exponentially, while security tools, not only in application security, but specifically, is not there yet. And this gap that is getting bigger every week, every day, with the improvements of AI for code generation, security will need to keep up. Any questions up till now? Yes.
So if we can generate code using AI, what do you think is causing us not to use AI to prove the code that was generated by AI or secure the code? Is there another perhaps opportunity that we can use AI with? And then
That's a great question, and I'm going to talk about that in 2 minutes. So thanks for the question, and let's park it for a second. Any more questions before moving to the next topic? All right. Now, another problem of AI is that it opens the door to supply chain attacks. And I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples, real examples from our research team that have proven that. Has anyone heard of AI hallucination? All right. So here is like Google Bard. Like last year, I had to check it out. I asked Bard, now it's called Gemini, and they keep changing the name, who Ori Bendet is. I think I know the answer. So it starts and says, yes, I do. Ori is the blah, 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 VP of Product Management. So far, so good, right? However, as you start drilling in, this is where it gets interesting. Ori holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from the Technion, Israel Institute, blah, 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 and an MBA from the University of Jerusalem. I've never been to the Technion, and I don't have an MBA. Of course, I sent it to my mother. But this is how risky AI hallucinations can get. Because keep in mind, and by the way, some of the solutions have already put a disclaimer, like if you're using the latest from GPT, you can see on the bottom that it adds like a disclaimer, says, this is AI generation, generated, not all information is correct, continue with cautious or whatever they put there, but think what happened with your code. And what happened with your code is AI hallucinations that open up for malicious packages attack. This is a real research coming from Vulkan. Vulkan is a Checkmarx partner that were able to prove that if you ask GPT, still one of the leading AI for assistant, not only code but in general, a lot of times to suggest open source packages, at some point it will start offering non-existing open source packages, which then hackers can take and create those non-existent open source packages with malicious code in it. And all of a sudden, by trusting GPT, you open the door to a supply chain attack, and hackers can take over your machine, your laptop, or whatever. Real examples, you can look at the research. Another example is malicious LLMs. Anyone heard of Hugging Face? Good for you, or bad for you. Hugging Face is one of the largest growing communities of open source LLMs. What we hear in the news is all about GPT and OpenAI and Azure OpenAI and all of the commercials, but there is a very large growing community of open source LLMs, like models, that basically everyone can go, upload a model, clone an existing model, modify it as you want, and re-upload it, and there are practically no guardrails whatsoever on that. And we know that hackers are doing that. They are going to Hugging Face, cloning a model, changing one line that sends your entire information to them, like your cookies or your sensitive information, and that's it. And this is how risky trusting AI. So this is on the AI and on the LLM side. Not to scare you, but just to give you awareness. Now we're talking about specifically application security. So one of the main problems with application security is that the market as a whole, not only Checkmarx, have been obsessed with finding vulnerabilities. Like we had SAST, static analysis, and open source, and DAST, and interactive, and containers, and so on and so on. But how do you even get started? And one of the biggest problems that developers have today and application security teams is the fact that they have alert fatigue. They have no idea where they need to start, and even if they do, they don't have the time to fix 10% of the issues. Not because they don't want to, simply because they don't have time. Now, what we want to move as an industry, and now I'm talking specifically about Checkmarx, is we want to move into a simplified model. A simplified model will come and say something very simple. Instead of finding, let's get input in secure code. It could be generated by GPT, by Copilot, by Cursor, by any of those. It can also be misconfigured if you're using infrastructure as code. But the output will not be you have a vulnerability or you have a misconfiguration. The output will be, here is your fixed code, here is how it should be, and all you need to do is click a button and fix it. Before moving to the third topic, I'll pause for questions. Any questions? All right. Now, moving a bit into some quick overview of agentic AI. So the main change between Gen AI to agentic AI is the ability to take action. And I won't go into the specifics. I know that everyone is stressed over some rain, not to minimize, but I'm coming from Israel, so the main change is the ability to act and to perform action on behalf of the user instead of waiting for the user input. So if we're talking about GPT, it can generate text and images upon request, which is called prompt, right? However, an agent or agentic AI will simply do that for you based on a set of rules and heuristics that you have defined. Now, going back to the code generations for a second, which are, some of them have gone all the way to agentic. Some of them do offer the ability, and this is to the gentleman that asked the question, of actually also doing the fixing. However, this is far from perfect. Now, there is a thing called instructions. If you haven't heard about that, Google it. Copilot has it. Claude now have introduced it, and I assume more will introduce it very soon. But you can do that on a repository level. You can define the instructions, where the instructions mean, for example, if you are about to generate a piece of code, make sure to avoid hard-coded secrets. Just taking a very simple example. And it can definitely reduce, but not completely prevent, the issues or the security vulnerabilities that are generated by AI. However, on the other side, it's only for source code, which is a small piece of an application, if you remember the Lego diagram that I showed you. Even with the instruction, it still generates insecure code, and it's really, really hard to enforce on every developers. Because developers don't like, do we have some developers in the room? Good. So it's really hard to enforce developers to do something. And even if you do that on the repo level, it's almost impossible. But this is some of the options that exist today. Now, how can a team of agents help you with your application security program? I've split it into 3 parts. The first one is to help you prevent, and I'll show how Checkmarx is doing that as well. Because you can have an agent that lives in the IDE together with developers that will scan the code real time and fix it for you. The second is it can provide you with context on everything that you need to do in order to improve your workflows. So if you want to have a Jira ticket or a ServiceNow ticket open, the agent can do that for you. You don't have to use an agent, but it can definitely do it for you. And think of it as your great friend that will help you scale. Because if a human can handle 5 bugs, 5 defects, 10 tickets a day, agent can do much more, and they are getting really, really better. Now, one of the most important things, and I've seen that with lots of people and lots of Checkmarx customers, is, and I'm sure that you're facing that, management comes one day and says, we have to use AI, right? It happens to Checkmarx. So, and the one thing that you shouldn't do is just use technology for the sake of using technology. You need to make sure that whatever you do, it meets a business need. And this is how we suggest to make sure that whatever you do with agentic, with agents, with AI, with everything related to AI, you need to tie it to these KPIs. The first one, and now specifically around security, to make sure that you have lower number of vulnerabilities that were introduced into production, or if you don't have production, to whatever the end state of your application. So it's really about business protection. Because at the end, if you are not reducing the risk, then you're not getting improved on your security process. Is there a question?
Yeah, lower than what?
Than what you have today. Like if you have, and there are many metrics around application security, like for example, vulnerability density. If you're familiar with the KPI, like how many vulnerabilities per 1,000 line of code. Good number is less than 1. Bad is higher than 1. So whatever you start, see that it's trending down. Thanks for the question. The second is around the DORA metrics. Those are 4 metrics, although there is also expanded versions of R&D or engineering efficiency, and using agents can definitely improve that, related and unrelated to security. And the last is optimizing engineering and specifically the cost of fix. I've seen CEOs go with statement that they're not going to hire any new developers over the next 5 years. And I've also heard, and again, it's public, so statement that they are expecting 40% improved velocity of developers. I think that we're getting very close, but it's still not a magic bullet, so yet to be seen, but definitely optimize the resources that you currently have. Now, going back specifically to AI and how can an agent in application security help. And then I'm going to talk about Checkmarx specifically and then show you a demo, and we'll be right in time. So the way that you can infuse application security with agents is by making sure that you have the agents at the right time. The first use case where lots of vendors, including Checkmarx, and I'm going to show it to you live, are starting is right in the IDE. Because instead of finding it later in the lifecycle. You can do it live while the code is being generated. Think about it, just like a spell checker when you write an email, same for your code. So as your developers are coding, it finds it, fixes it, and prevents it from even getting into any report or any build system or any process that you have. On the other side, as part of the pull request or build process, again, not to get into the specifics, what if you can completely automate that? Let's say that we found a vulnerability somewhere here in between. Now, today, before agents, before AI, you would probably need to have a very manual process or semi-automated of triaging and reviewing and approving or arguing and so on and so on. What if this whole process can be automated with agents, and all you have to do at the end is click a button and say approve or disapprove. And we are getting there. So these are the two areas. Now, specifically, how Checkmarx is looking at that is we have introduced a set of agents targeted for each of the critical personas in application security. First is the developer, and I'm going to deep dive into that in the next 2 slides. But in short, it lives in the IDE, and it finds as a developer type and prevents the vulnerabilities from even happening. The second one, targeted for the application security teams, the central security team, in order to help them scale their process. So it can look at everything that they have, all the repositories, including legacy code, including tech debt or security debt, and it can fix it, and it can prioritize, and it can reduce all the noise that it has, including, and I know that we have some of the Checkmarx customers in the room, reducing false positives that the scanners find. And this is one of the main things that we already started working on. And the last is for the executive, whether it's the engineering manager, the CTO, CISO, and so on, where instead of working with static dashboards or a Splunk or any of those tools, it would come and it would say to the agent, I'm about to go to my weekly, monthly, quarterly review with my engineering leads, with my AppSec team, with the board. Give me the top 5 insights metrics, and it will generate it for him or her live instead of going into dashboards that are always a nightmare to work with. Questions up till now? All right. Now, deep diving into the developer assist agent that we have, the way that we are working is we live in the developer ecosystem. Whatever the developer has installed on their IDE, on their laptop, this is what we utilize, and we find it in the IDE, and you will see it live in a second. And we fix it by leveraging the AI generator that is already there. So again, to the question from before, this is how we utilize, but the fact that we have found the issue real time and we were able to guide the AI on how to fix it is the main difference instead of just generating the code to begin with. And now, let's see it live. All right, so this is the developer IDE. We don't have any developers, so I can say whatever I want, and you'll need to believe me. This is Visual Studio Code with Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, just some configurations, nothing fancy so far, but look what happens now. And I will pause so it will be easier. This is a package JSON. If you're familiar with that, that's good. If not, I'll explain. It's just the list of dependencies, open source packages that you pull from Artifactories, repositories, and so on. And what happened is that immediately the Checkmarx agent, identify that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 issues with what this developer has. Now, what would usually happen without the agent is the fact that this would probably get into a scanner, Checkmarx or any of those. It would get into the through process, open the ticket, open a GitHub issue, and then goes into the entire process of triaging and prioritization and so on and so on. Instead, what will happen now is that the agent will identify, alert the developer, and the developer will fix it real time, including, and this is a big one because developers don't like that someone else touches their code. Tell them exactly the changes that they are doing. So let's see it live. All right, here it is. It's coming. All right. So this is what I want. This one. Oh, sorry. Perfect. Okay, so what you can see now is that we found a critical issue with this package, and the developer, all it needs to do is press the fix with Checkmarx and Copilot, and it will generate the fix for him or her in real time in the IDE. Just jumping a bit. And here you can see that it started to interact in the IDE with GitHub Copilot. The Checkmarx agent is guiding Copilot on the actual fix. And you can also see here on that it's already fixed. And if there were any other connections or links to this to this package usage, it would be replaced automatically, and the developer would be alerted on that. And you will see another example of secret removal as well. Okay, I'm jumping a bit because I don't know why it's working so slow, but here's another example. Okay, in this case, hard-coded secrets in source code. We have 3 of them, 1, 2. This one is not real, but let's treat it as 1. And again, identified in real time by the agent, and now we will generate the fix. Again, in this case, you can see secrets have been detected. This is a secret finding, and all the developer need to do is press the fix with Checkmarx and Copilot, and that's it. Just jumping a bit. And here, this is the big one, because you can see that we have changed the entire code, the entire file in this case, and we've also created another one in order to fix the problem. So it's not just a very shallow fix, but we analyze everything, and we guide the agent guides the AI that the developer already have on their machine, sorry, in order to fix it. So let's just finish the demo. All right. Perfect. So now, yeah, absolutely.
When it fixed that library from 00.1
Yes.
how does the agentic AI know that major version upgrade is not going to cause other compatibility issues? I know you kind of mentioned briefly towards the end, like it does not do a shallow thing.
Yeah.
You know, like how do you analyze this transitive dependencies and other context-sensitive
Mm-hmm.
thing to determine like the fixed version that it has suggested?
Great question.
Not going to cause any other issues.
Yeah, it's a great question and one of the hardest thing to fix, because in open source all you need to do is change, but it can break your entire code base, right? Absolutely. The way that we're doing that is we are analyzing all the calls to the functions that were changed, and if there was a change because it's not backward compatible, we'll make the change if we're able to. It's not 100%. But if we aren't, we'll alert the developer about these changes and extra steps that he or she needs to take. So we are doing the blast radius, this is how we call it, analysis to make sure that we don't break the code base.
A follow-up to that, right?
Sure.
For me, how do you determine the criticality of it? Like if it is a low severity issue, I don't want to fix it right now.
So
How can you?
absolutely. So again, due to time, but in short, and happy to take it afterwards, we do have the ability to ignore.
Okay.
And then you will have like here the ignore list. So developers can definitely say, I don't care about that, or it's not really an issue, I'm fixing it somewhere else. So exactly. Yes.
Well, I want to know, how does it pull in trusted binaries? You talked about supply chain there. Therefore, of course, you want to pull in trusted models or trusted software dependencies. You're looking at different binaries, different models. Does it have like a whitelist that it uses? You want to enforce some type of constraint on the environment.
So yes, we do that, but the agent doesn't handle that. But what we do have is we have another plugin for an Artifactory. For example, if you're using JFrog, I assume most people here. So we can live in your Artifactory and give you these, like the insights that I just showed in the Artifactory. And based on that, you can define policies to allow it to exist, but not download, download, but alert. So there's different levels and it's based on the policies. The agent is not handling that. This is handled in another area in the Artifactory. Yeah.
Is there, I know oftentimes problems there's more than one way to solve them. Is there a way for developers to kind of guide the AI into, because one solution might be to upgrade to a higher version, but say there's an intermediary version which is the highest version might be the most secure, but the intermediary might have more compatibility.
Yeah.
Oftentimes these fixes are balancing calls. Is there a way that Checkmarx can work with that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is like the chat is fully interactive. Okay. So the developer can come and say, no, that's a very bad fix. Give me something else. Or give me a fix that, as you said, doesn't completely break my code base or has the least changes I need to make to my code base. So
they can do more than just say, give me another fix, but they can say, I want it done this way and get
yes. And then, and this is also something that is important, they get the immediate feedback if it really solved the issue or not. Great question, by the way, so thanks for that. More questions?
I got one.
Yeah.
So when you say immediately, what's the turnaround time on something like that?
So the finding those alerts are, again, milliseconds. Okay, the generation is really based on the like whatever the developer has. So Copilot is a bit slower compared to Cursor. However, it really depends. But it's within the workflow. So it's not like back in the day that developers pressed the button, went to drink coffee, and came back. It's like as they code, as they vibe code, as now developers are calling it, it's part of the workflow, and they will wait for that. Yes?
Just one quick question, more out of curiosity. Checkmarx AI, is that running locally on the developer system, or is that pulling out to a online server somewhere.
Good question.
With AI, you're using a lot of power in these cases. You kind of want to know where's the code running, what's the real cost of this thing.
Yeah, so for the finding, most of it runs locally. So we have, you can call them mini scanners if you want, like a mini static, mini infrastructure as code that runs as part of our plugin. There are calls for our central database for vulnerabilities and malicious packages, but that's just an API call. So not compute heavy or something like that. All the rest is utilizing what the developer already has.
Okay, so most of the developers' actual code is staying within their system.
Correct.
Just calling out for new bugs and new stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. There was another question in the back. Yeah.
Can developers choose which model they want to use, or is it your own proprietary?
No. So on the finding, this is proprietary checkmarks. On the fixing, it's whatever they have, and we support any MCP-based solution that exists. All right. Great questions. All right. So just to wrap up, and we covered a lot, from the impact of AI. Just to give you some recommendation on, what can you start doing tomorrow morning, and we covered some of that. I won't read through everything, but just on culture, and what I mentioned is that try to avoid using technology just for the sake of technology. Make sure that to connect it to business outcomes. On technology, we understand that while AI is great, it's far from perfect, specifically around code generation, and you need to be aware of that. So whether you're using other tools from other vendors or Checkmarx or open source, there are definitely great open source solutions out there. Make sure that you have that. On ops, we also talked about that, like which metrics should you track if it's helping you, like we talked about a bit the density, but definitely other ones, DORA and the rest of them. Make sure that they are connected. And on the strategy, make sure that you have a strategy in place on how to accelerate. So it's not, again, just using security or, using technology for the sake of technology. And I want to send you home safely with one ask is whatever you have today, don't drop it. Like I had discussion with customers saying, okay, so now I have the agent. I don't need a full DevSecOps cycle, right? No, absolutely no. So keep what you have, because with AI and hallucinations and all the examples that I shared with you, you need layers. You need to have the first layer that is real-time catching it as it being created, and then you need the full one to make sure that you didn't miss anything or somebody didn't push anything along the way. So don't drop, make sure that you have and work with layers. And thank you very much for having me. And I'm here for any additional questions. So thank you very much.